clearly, there was a lot of people worried about, um, cheating. And so these men are watching those last moments to make sure they go, they report it on the up and up. Um, even like if you have to think about it also, probably, I mean, look, this gentleman's wearing a suit, this man's wearing a suit. I'm sure at the beginning of the race, this man was also, the runner was also wearing a suit. Maybe I can see him in a double-breasted kind of blazer, maybe a cummerbund. I can see him starting in a suit, but the rules probably were fair. There's a certain amount of the suit you can remove during the race if it starts becoming cumbersome. And if you look at these shorts here, there's quite a lot of materials. I'm sure they were, you know, this was definitely part of a nice suit. And I guess maybe there's a rule about you. Like I can see if I was making the rules up, I would say when someone crosses the finish line, I would expect them to be wearing two shoes. So maybe that's what these judges are doing. There's just a lot of processing that they need to do before he's allowed to cut this finish line. Because I think this is probably a nice. I mean, think about this. Once he breaks this, the next runner doesn't get the opportunity to break it. So they're going to make sure that he is in a position to win. I mean, if he's missing a shoe, they're going to call it. I mean, these guys, this is serious. This is their job, and also too. I mean, maybe what I would also do. That's why maybe he's clearing this. Maybe this is kind of a thick vellum that maybe it doesn't break, and he's there that once the runner touches it to make sure it doesn't cause any damage. I mean, that would make sense for why he has the megaphone. It still doesn't explain why this guy is ready to shake his hand, even before it's just let the guy win the race. Then shake the hand. What's interesting too is this swimmer, because I'm sure in the Olympics back then, they didn't have it clockwork. I mean, we spend a lot of time on this now. There's a lot of industry around it. But here's a guy, a swimmer. I mean, clearly he's dressed in swimming garb, and he's probably starting a meet another, a couple of 100 yards off. Now you would expect him to be closer to the crowd, with the actual swimming event. Those are some optimizations we've had later in the 20th century. But this is here clearly someone calling the race, and then he's going to sit down and watch this race as it finishes. I think that was probably very, very common back then. There was many things going on. It was a lot of events. They didn't have, they had to get back to work. If you think about it, there wasn't a lot of free time. So this had to wrap it up pretty much in a day. Interesting. I don't know how long the Olympics. I'll have to check into that, but I can see them wrapping the Olympics up in a day. I can definitely, people had to work back then. Most of these people had other jobs. This was a part time. Other than the police officers, this is probably their job. This is maybe their beat. It's just today their beat showed up with a, there was a race going on, and again the same thing. They're, looking for criminal activity happening. Again, if the runner was someone of some questionable moral turpitude. Maybe he's ready to, at the end, he will win the race. They'll, put a medal. But he's here, he's going to, have some questions to ask. There's something missing, maybe some jewelry from one of the towns. That's why, it's very likely that, at the end of this, there may be a crime scene. There may be questions. Also, I guess a lot of things, we probably should go into here that I've noticed that there's a lot of epistemological problems. I mean, just in general, in Western civilization, there's a lot of notable foot races throughout the last 5,000 years in culture. You have the the very famous race between Odysseus and Ajax, which Odysseus run, and Ajax had later taken his life because he had lost, and the Greeks they took it very serious about their, honor. There's a lot of honor culture going on, the fact that he had lost, or he was sulking. There's a lot of sulking in Greek literature. I mean, I have to say that, and like just people just taking it way too seriously. But this guy is, I have to admit, he doesn't. I don't see him. Again, he is winning, so I don't want to. There's really no reason for him to feel remorse. I don't see anyone even close to him in the race. But I think if you look at this from a Heraclitean perspective, this man, yes, you have to think, is he if you think of something like Zeno's paradox, let's start there. And a classic way of talking about Zeno's paradox is that you use the example of Achilles and the tortoise are in a race. And if Achilles gets ahead and then the tortoise is running, the tortoise will only be able to, at best, be halfway between where he is now and Achilles. And then from then on, he will always be halfway between Achilles and himself. So hence he will never be able to catch up. And so that was Zeno's paradox back then. And again, I could even see like in a race where, these are two philosophers. One a Heraclitean. Heraclitean meaning like you can't step in the same river twice. That's kind of and so the point is they really break the moment down into time. You're not the same person a second later and a second later, and if you take it to ultimate skepticism, who's to say even like he could just before this finish line completely vanish, and then hence he would be disqualified. If he were to vanish before he hits the line, you really can't give him the race. I don't know how many times that's ever happened. It's probably very, very few, if ever. And maybe there is somewhat of a myth of it. And these people are there to make sure that he actually breaks the line, and don't assume. Like, 'cause what if he also, if he were to come up to the line, vanish, pass through the line, right, and then appear again? So the Heraclitean's going to make sure, from his perspective, that this is a fair race. But from the kind of Socratic view, I think our chief clerk is more Socratic. Even those times people tend to, there's always skepticism in general,